My name is Hans Tammen. I actually play guitar for like 38 years or something like this. I started a little bit with rock music. I studied a little bit classical guitar. I was for a long time in the 80s. I did a lot of jazz performances. And from the end of the 80s on, I did something that people would call today experimental. I was very interested in sounds and sonic development and all this kind of thing. So I started leaving harmonic development and melodies and all this stuff like behind. And I explored first like using a lot of like pedals on my guitar, so like 3 distortion pedals, a couple of harmonizers and all this kind of things. And until I figured out it doesn't matter actually what I send into this effect chain, whether it's a microphone or some synthesizer sounds with the guitar, it didn't make any sense. So I could like also leave guitar playing and do something else with this. So this is where the guitar became endangered. The idea of the endangered guitar got born, because at the end I got back to playing guitar because that's what I do and what I can. And then I got rid of these pedals because I felt they were not dynamic enough, and they didn't react to what I'm doing. And I developed a lot of like creating sounds from guitars with like little gadgets, sticks, stones, and all this kind of stuff. All the stuff that I have here on my table that I practically use for like 15, 18 years right now. And this whole setup became more and more complicated, also with different routings of the guitars, and then like some newfound pedals, back and forth, mixers, modified guitars, and all these kind of things. They were so modified that I could also create some string boards to play with. And I was again away from the whole guitar idea. So again, I came back to playing guitar. So the guitar is endangered but not extinct. And then I figured that the whole setup was so complicated that I could emulate some of that with a computer. So I discovered in 1999 Max MSP. And I started programming myself, my whole setup within the computer, doing interactive programming with this. So since 1999, I work with this, and since 2001, I haven't done a concert anymore without Max MSP on stage. I'm an improviser. I have different approaches to improvisation in the last 20 years. And today I'm really into, I need my setup to surprise me. It's not just like a rearranging from some stuff that I already play, that I play all the time. And I program the software in a way that there's some kind of fuzziness, some randomness in the whole thing, so that when I'm live on stage, whether it's solo or with larger ensembles, that there's always this like element of unexpectedness in there that surprise me, and then I have to do very quick decisions to make music out of it. Basically, it all starts with, these days, like a very ordinary guitar, and that I create sounds with a lot of these kind of like gadgets. I have to say, there's some sounds in these that I can do that you cannot really get with electronic. And it goes into my Max MSP software that records my stuff, at the same time uses the guitar, analyzes the sound with like pitch, velocity and other elements, and uses this as a controller to change parameters on my live sound processing. So I create first my sounds with one of these gadgets, just like, for example, I take a little mallet that's a little bit harder than others, maybe this one, and I have these crocodile clips, which is for many people who do this kind of experimental guitar one of the mainstays of their work. And there's no electronics involved, but just like listen to that right now. So this is a very simple thing to make like these bell-like sounds and a little groove and these kind of stuff. Can also be like much more everything is like possible as long as you get like stuff in, get a little nice espresso thing. And what people often do with this kind of work is like using an EBow, which gives you endless sustain until the battery runs out. Again, I record everything into my Max MSP software. I have a buffer that is constantly filled with new material when it comes in. And I can, for example, apply some of my playing style to the pitch of the sample that gets played back or so. And this is just like the same sample, nothing changed, no processing, sometimes played a little bit backwards, forwards, parts of it, or stuff like this. We can also apply some filtering to the whole experience. Let's try this here. Very beautiful sounds. Basically, I have two inputs on the computer. One is my guitar. Another input can be another pickup that I often have, that I can put something on there. For example, if you put a cell phone on there or a digital camera, it creates this very little subtle beat. It's totally great. I also sometimes use an external synthesizer to put into the right thing. So they all go first into a mono kind of effect chain where you have filtering, flanging, and all these kind of things. And also some things that you can do with Max MSP easily, for example, amplifying the sound 10,000 times. There's no software out there that lets you amplify sound 10,000 times because it would create some digital distortion that nobody likes. But I like the digital distortion. When it's so over the top distorted, it creates some beautiful elements that I really like. And if you then filter these sounds, so this comes like has some great results. In Max, since you can program it very easily, it is not a problem to do it. I figured out that after 6,000 times amplification, times 6,000, the sound doesn't change that much anymore to, let's say, 100,000 times. The next step that it goes into a buffer that is like from a millisecond long to 150 seconds. In most cases, I'm now used to play with a 2-second long buffer that is constantly filled. And if I play with more like, let's say, avant jazz people where you have to react a little bit quicker, then I often go down with the sample, sometimes a little bit longer. And I often play the sample back or record the sample so short that rhythmic clicking appears. That's also something that I like very much. So I get often the feedback, hey, where's this clicking coming from? It's certainly in the terms of programming not a big deal to get around it in Max MSP, but I like clicking. You know? I like everything that's like dirty, crazy, or something. Well, at the end then I have actually 4 buffers with the same material running on top of each other, and they get split into a stereo field. And sometimes if I'm lucky that somebody gives me a surround sound system, I can also do like a 5.1 performance. And this stereo field has a couple of stereo effects applied to as well. which is the same like filtering and so on. I just double the effects, but then they go stereo through it. At the same time, I record material into another buffer that I take individual 8 parts out and arrange them in a rhythmical fashion so that I can create grooves on the fly with the stuff that I'm doing. So this is a parallel buffer, so I can stop this buffer and then this groove will stay there and use the same samples all the time. Otherwise, when I'm playing, this buffer gets filled constantly so that the sounds of my beat engine change constantly. The thing with the amplification actually is not that great anymore. I had it on a 1 gigahertz computer and it was beautiful. And then I got these 2 point whatever gigahertz computer and I cannot get it to distort as nasty as it was before. Just the engine, the computer is too powerful for that, Crank is my function. So this is, oh yeah, and what it was, well, hold on. This is too loud here, the Blippo box. Wow. Where's the sound coming from? Interesting. It's still nicely distorted, but it's not the same as I had before. What works better is if I degrade the sound like crazy, That still works. I love the iPhone. The problem is all the cell phones have a very distinct sound. You just need to amplify it like crazy. The only problem is you cannot go into the cell phone store and say, like, can I try out your cell phones? They do, So,
tried a razor? Can I throw a razor in there?
Get me that. And now the young guys are all doing noise, It's like, you're like, and the kids, they cannot play any instrument or nothing, but when it comes to noise, they're totally, and that's a totally new thing, in the last 10 years, it's great.